Today's episode of Running It Back is here. It is new. It is fresh. I can't wait for you to hear it. Hey, if you're new to the Running It Back channel, if you're new to the Running It Back network, please give my channel a subscribe. Just give it a click. You will see all the videos on my channel, videos, previous interviews, stand-up comedy clips, and other shows as well. Shows such as the Sunday Night Talk, which is currently running. We sit down for a talk every Sunday, talking football, talking lives. It's all on there. Give it a subscribe. You will not be disappointed. If you want to see me doing live stand-up comedy, I will be at the Hollywood Improv November 21st, performing in the lab. I'm on a show produced by Brian McDaniel, a comedian who's been on this very show. So if you want to go back and listen to his interview, it's all right there. We had a great talk. But today on the show, today on Running It Back, comedian Rob Morris joins me for a chat. We talk about Texas. We talk about growing up in the theater. We talk about his early jobs working in TV as well and how it's all translated to stand-up comedy right now. Rob is the host of his very own YouTube show called We Are New. He is on Instagram at Rob Morris Yo as well. We sit down for a talk, and of course, we wrap it all up with the Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game. How did he do? Well, you're going to have to listen. I'm going to say, it's a tough game. You know what I'm talking about. Let's not delay anymore. Here is my conversation with comedian and YouTube show host, Rob Morris. All right, on the show today, he is one of the hosts of the We Are New YouTube show, Rob Morris, comedian. Welcome, Rob. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, dude. Oh, the fanfare. I didn't expect that. That is nice.
Oh, I didn't tell you. Yeah, live audience in the...
That is great. Thank
home
you.
studio.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, everybody.
Well,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I have in your bio here, comedian. But if I'm to make an addition, can I say one of the more well-dressed performers on stage?
Oh, because I would wear a suit a lot?
You do the blazer, but it doesn't end there. You do the blazer. Sometimes you wear like the tie. Sometimes you do like the ultra cool hoodie under the blazer as an aspiring, as an aspiring blazer wearer. I gotta say, very, very jealous of like all the cool pictures that end up. Looks like you really owned it on there, Rob.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that a lot. For me, it was a conscious choice at one point when I first started doing stand-up, and I've been cold on stand-up for a little while. But when I first started, I found, especially when I was going to mics around LA, it was really hard for me to shake off the day job and what was going on in my life and try to like take on some persona that was confident and believed in his jokes. And I grew up doing theater. And so for me, I had the realization of like, well, attach a costume to the character. So that way, every time I get on stage, I've got a blazer or a suit or something on that's not just like my slummy, stony self. And I can actually like wake up and not feel like a schlub and feel like I'm supposed to be doing something and have some energy and have some confidence. And I don't know, man, a blazer does that for me. It helps me get into character, I guess.
That's interesting that you drew upon like the theater background as having some sort of costuming or performing. And also like what I find interesting about like the comics in my world is we all see each other perform, but I gotta say the most interesting thing about the comics in my world and stuff are the things they do outside of comedy, because we all have jobs. We all have interests outside of comedy. We're all doing this balancing act where we're essentially working 1.5 jobs. We've got our regular full-time job. We've got the comedy job. Of course, we're getting paid for about half a job when you do the math.
Sure.
So what ends up happening is like I get this from when I'm watching your YouTube show, that you have this whole history, you have this whole background that isn't necessarily exclusive to stand-up comedy, like the YouTube show, for example. is the one you've been doing, the We Are New show. When did you
Yeah.
start that?
I started doing We Are New is probably I think it's my fourth. I never sat down and counted. It's like my fourth or fifth like podcast talk show thing that I've set out to do. And it's the one I'm working on, one of two that I'm working on currently. I started it last December with my wife and my roommate, who's like our producer engineer. And it really came about because, like I said, I'd done a bunch of other shows. The first podcast I ever did, I started in 2014. And I went to a school in North Carolina that's like an arts conservatory acting school called North Carolina School of the Arts. And I loved going to that school. I was a shit student growing up all the time. And when I got into that school, it was insane to me because it's really pretty like prestigious, even though it's kind of unknown. And the acceptance rate is really low. And I kind of weaseled my way in. And I had such a good time there. And my favorite part of being there, other than doing plays and making art and stuff, was just the conversations. I loved talking to the other artsy people who went there and finding out where they're from and what motivates them to do what they do. And I had a genuine interest in it. And I spent about a year outside of school. I was working at Comedy Central, and I was very lucky to have that job. But I still, even though I had this job that I felt like was really kind of a dream scenario, I missed those conversations because when you work in TV, it goes so fast. You don't spend a lot of time just shooting the shit, and theater is a lot of shit shooting. So I missed it. I started at The Elephants, which is a show I've been doing on and off for 8 years. I just started doing it again. And I always liked that show, but then I would take breaks. I moved out to LA. I wasn't doing At The Elephants at one point, and I was like, I want to do another talk show, another show. And I think the first one I really ended up doing was at the Fourth Wall in North Hollywood. And it was right after Trump got elected. No, it was like a year after he'd been elected. And we were going into the midterms, his midterms. And I was like, I've always been a fan of Bill Maher and Real Time. And I was like, I've always want to work on a late night show. I'm not going to sit around and wait to get a job on a show like that. I'm just going to make my own. And we're going to broadcast live from the Fourth Wall. I got a bunch of other open mic comics together, and we were like, let's write a monologue every week together. And we'll have a panel, and we'll kind of do our own ripoff of Real Time. And we did that. So that was the first YouTube show. I probably did like 13, 14 episodes of that. It just stopped for a number of reasons. The main one being like, I knew it was going to be a lot of work, but it was even more work than I thought it was going to be. And trying to get a bunch of people to work on a show that was that big, it seems small if you watch it, but it was a big production for the Fourth Wall, which was an open mic theater. And so it just kind of fell to the wayside. Then I started doing my own version of Doug Benson's Getting Doug with High, where he would have people on and like smoke weed and play games.
Yeah.
I did a really short-lived version of that, where I would have people on and smoke weed, and I would ask him like really heavy questions, like would you rather live for 50 years exactly or live for 300 years? Like exactly. And you knew when you were going to die. Like, what would you, but I'd get him baked as shit first and then just watch.
I can't answer that sober, Rob. That's difficult.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough, and people, I remember the first person I had on the show was Michael Regilio, one of my favorite comics, and met him doing open mics. He worked on the Real Time show as like one of the main writers, and he came over. He didn't really know what he was getting into, and he was like, I thought we were going to talk about the LA comedy scene. I'm fucking blasted. And you're like, how would you kill yourself? How would you like these like really weird questions? So I did that for a minute, and I've always wanted to make stuff. And then I took a big break from making shows. And then this last December, after all the pandemic stuff happened and I spent a little time in Austin, Texas, I came back to LA, and I was like, I want to do another show. I don't know if I should reboot an old one and start it again or what I wanted to do. But my wife, who is still in and finishing her graduate program for social work as a therapist, she has a great personality, but as soon as there's a camera rolling, she kind of freezes up and gets tight and gets like awkward, and way less now. And because of the way therapy is evolving, so much more of it is digital. And she was like, I don't want to get weird when I'm seeing clients over the computer. And I don't know what to do about that. And I was like, well, this seems like kind of two things that could go together. What if we started doing a show together? I've become a big fan of Your Mom's House with Tom Segura and Christina P over the last few years. And I was like, I like the kind of husband and wife vibe, and they both bring different things to the table. And again, let me rip off somebody else's idea and make my own version of it. We started that in December, and we've been doing it fairly consistently. We try to publish at least once a month. If we can do 2 or 3 episodes a month, we do, but with trying to coordinate the 3 of our schedules is tough. But it's really evolved into, we didn't know what it was going to be, but it's evolved into a lot of, we kind of catch up in the beginning, and then our roommate Kyle will bring like stories from Reddit or things he found on the internet where people are kind of having a debate over here about this thing. He brings it onto the show and throws it to us, and we're like, what do you think? What would you do? And it's become really
I like
fun.
the one where he was trying to see how you guys pronounced words. I got into that one in the sense where like I'm pronouncing the words along with you guys.
Where are you from originally?
Like, I'm from El Paso, Texas. That's where I grew up.
Oh, word up. Yeah, I'm from Austin. Yep. That's cool.
Yeah, I grew up in El Paso, Texas. I lived in Utah for about 10 years. And then
so you probably got a mixed variety of like regional expressions and shit like that too.
Yeah. Well, you can speak to this. We know East Coast, we know West Coast, we know the South. The one that really doesn't get spoken a lot about is the Southwest. It has its own dialect. It is so spread out. There is so much space in the Southwest. It's diverse in a different way, and you never really hear it get spoken about what it's like to live in a desert where we have a different sort of climate. So when I meet people from Texas, occasionally New Mexico, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, it is a different sort of world that I never hear. Like, there's no movies about people from the Southwest. There's East Coast, there's West Coast, there's country
Breaking
movies.
Bad,
right?
No one ever watched anything from that region.
That's a good one. Yeah, good point. Yes. Yeah, good point. So I sort of got it with the dialects and the roots and saying like figuring out how to pronounce words. And then sometimes you move to a place. When I lived in Salt Lake City, they would say like, "Oh, this person has a Utah accent." I'm like, "What the hell is a Utah accent?" And now I'm looking for it, and every once in a while I can hear it. So it is funny how we just kind of pronounce words based on our region. But the Southwest does not get spoken a lot about, I have found.
That's definitely, I love accents so much. In the art school that I went to, we took a whole year's course on accents and dialects and just spent a year learning how to do British accents and French accents and all these different things. I've been fascinated with voices my whole life. I think the way people speak, the way they say things is fascinating to me. And being able to dive into why people say things a certain way. You got to be careful though, because so many people, as soon as you start asking them like, "Oh, I noticed you said this word instead of that word," or "I noticed you pronounced it this way," and you ask where they're from or whatever, people get a little defensive because they worry you're making fun of the way they talk. And I am fully never making fun of the way anybody talks. Like I am just, I'm curious, and I don't think there's really a wrong way. My accent teacher used to say, nobody has an accent, everybody has a voice. Because when you say like, "Oh, you have an interesting accent," what you're saying is you speak differently than I do. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's just different. And LA is a cool, especially in comedy and going to open mics. It's such a melting pot of, you got people from all over this country. You got people from Venezuela. You got a guy doing, on stage, speaking in a German accent for 5 minutes. And then he gets off stage. You're like, "Oh man, are you from Germany?" He's like, "Oh no, man, I'm from like San Francisco. I just do a character." And you're like, "Oh, that was very convincing. I had no idea."
Yeah, that's true.
I love it.
We have quite the range. And like with the accents, like I've heard accents in my hometown, in my region, where it's the Hispanic person who does not speak Spanish, but speaks with a Mexican accent. That's half my family.
Mexican accent with no Spanish.
Yeah, they don't speak Spanish. That's half of my family as well.
Sure.
Like I can hear it, like when people speak it, I can jump in and out of that accent very easily. Like I don't do voices, but I can do that one on the dime, just because I grew up with it. I can do the Texas accent like that, but if you
Right.
just say like, oh, do the Boston accent, do the New York accent, you're like, I'm gonna be impersonating some silly cartoon of
Right.
somebody who I've heard do it. So it's so funny. Let's go way back though. You mentioned
Sure.
you grew up in Austin.
Yeah.
What's young Rob Morris's goals and interests starting out in Austin? How long did you live there for? Did you leave when you went to college?
Yeah, so I was born in Dallas. I lived there in the suburbs, like in Arlington, like Metroplex area until I was about 7. I moved to Austin and lived there until high school. For a year in high school, I moved to inner city Manhattan and went to
Oh,
like an
wow.
arts high school for a year. Then I moved back to Texas for senior year. And then I went to a tiny community college in Northeast Texas, like in the Tyler area, for almost a whole freshman year, and then quit because I was like, this is just high school 2.0, and I was bad at high school. So then I eventually moved to North Carolina, where I went to, I spent a year getting in-state tuition, did 4 years there, dated a girl who was still in school behind me. So I went to New York again for a year, came back, ended up spending about 7 years in North Carolina, about 2 years in New York total. And so there was definitely a lot of moving around and a lot of different exposure as far as culture and stuff like that. But growing up, to answer your question, dude, I was lost for a long time.
Really?
I was not.
Did you
a
have
kid.
interests, or what were
Yeah.
your interests? Why do
was
you say
into-
you were lost?
I mean, I was a kid. I was a kid in the 90s. I was, I liked video games and watching movies and stuff like that. I've been a stand-up nerd since I was able to speak English, just because I loved, I'm the baby in the family. So I was always hungry for attention. I loved the notion of like making people laugh. And my parents were pretty liberal about letting me watch stuff. Like there wasn't a lot of like, you're not allowed to see that. So I was watching very much adult comedy when I was
Who were you?
not an
Who
adult.
were your early stand-ups? Who did you like early on?
Oh, the first album I ever bought was super tame. It was Bill Engvall, because he was
Oh,
from,
really? Oh,
yeah,
Texas. Okay,
he was
that makes
from the
sense.
same neighborhood of Texas I was from. I loved Bill Engvall as a kid. Ate up like all his like first 3 albums I was obsessed with. A kid burned me a copy of a CD, and that was an early one. But even before that, I became a bigger fan of him later, but my parents had like Steve Martin on like vinyl. I got really into Eddie Murphy really young, like Delirious and Raw, which I shouldn't have been watching when I was 8, but was for sure.
Right.
Obsessed with that. And then when I was in high school, I got really into like the Gen X comedians, Patton Oswalt, David Cross, Maria Bamford, like what did they have? The Comedians of Comedy tour, I think.
Oh,
they
yes,
did,
they
was
were all
pretty
in the
big.
van. I remember that. Yeah.
And Posehn and those guys, I got really into that because they were way more edgy. They were telling jokes that either were weird. David Cross was doing a lot of like George W. Bush.
Yeah. David
era
Cross. That's
humor.
right.
Dude, Cross was my shit. I was so obsessed
Garofalo
with
was
David Cross.
in that sort of world as well.
I got real into those guys. And then right as I was leaving high school, I started to get into even weirder stuff like Eugene Merman. Like,
interesting. Yeah.
I loved Eugene Merman.
Any
when I was,
Emo
like,
Phillips in
20.
there?
Yeah. Loved Emo Phillips.
That's a very deep cut. Yeah.
Found him a little later, like probably early 20s. Also early 20s, I became obsessed with Andy Kaufman, all the like, more bizarre shit that when I would finally, because when I was a kid, the reason I loved stand-up is because it was a great way to interact with my parents and my family, because I would watch Eddie Murphy and then I would go very problematically like reenact the Eddie Murphy bits to my family.
Yeah.
And they would laugh and I'd be like, they like this. And I would go learn Carlin and I would come back, or I would learn Robin Williams. And I would come back and like do the bits for them and they would laugh. And then I started getting into, like I said, the Gen Xers, like the David Cross and the Patton Oswalt. Then I would go to my parents and be like, this, and they'd be like, I don't get this. I don't know what this is.
Interesting.
And then once I kind of lost them as an audience, I was like, this is more for me. Like, and once I dove in, then it was like, Kaufman, Emo Phillips, Eugene Merman. I had a period where I was obsessed with the Amazing Jonathan, rest in peace.
Oh yeah,
The
interesting.
magician
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and comedian, very much so. Loved him. And I won't pretend I'm super hip. Fucking diehard Dane Cook fan in high school when he was blowing
Yeah.
up.
People forget the
Had a
power.
watch party for his HBO
Oh, yeah.
special.
Dane Cook took a lot of shit, but people forget the
I still
Dane
like him.
Cook power that a couple of those albums were. That Madison Square Garden one, a couple of those
Harmful
Comedy
as
Central.
Swallowed, dude.
Yep.
Great
He
and
was-
great album.
He was very much on the Jim Carrey track. His movies never popped, but
Right.
leading into it, like the stand-up was huge.
Massive.
People were reciting lines. It's almost like he became like too popular, and it had to have a backlash, of course. But like people forget how big the Dane Cook name was in those
Yeah.
mid to late '90s, early 2000s.
And I've always been someone that and maybe it's because a lot of times people don't fucking care for me and the things that I try to do. And I've faced that plenty of times. Every time I fall in love with a performer, or a celebrity, or someone that I'm like really like their shit, and then the world kind of turns on them and is like,
Yeah.
fuck that guy.
Yeah, we do that with bands too.
I have no shame in sticking with them. I never gave up on Dane. I never gave up on Ben Affleck. I never gave up on.
yeah.
I loved Ben Affleck in the 90s, and then all of a sudden everybody hated him and he was like super lame. And I was like, he's fucking great. Have you not
Right.
seen Chasing Amy? I fucking love
That's
that
right.
dude.
What about Phantoms?
Yeah, fuck, he's the bomb in Phantoms,
Right.
yo.
Well, remember this. We're of similar we're of similar age where Goodwill Hunting came out and we were like, "Oh, Affleck and Damon." And then I more so would rediscover the movies they did before that movie.
Right.
Where I was like, "Hey, remember School Tides? Oh, that was Damon. Damon is in that." And you would go watch like movies previous. You would go watch Dazed and Confused and you'd be like, Affleck?
Yeah,
You would
fucking
watch it.
Mallrats.
Right. You would go watch Courage Under Fire and you would be like, that's them before they were them.
Yeah.
It was almost like a discovering of something that had already happened. But by the time it gets to me, the fan, I have to go find out all this research and I have to go figure out who these guys are. Like I was like that with Jack Black too, where
Sure.
he would be like in The Cable Guy. Me and my buddies knew his name, but then
Great.
he's in what's that one popular movie? He's in Shallow Hal, and you're
Right.
like, whatever, dude. I saw him in The Cable Guy. Like, I'm already got season tickets on this guy.
Fucking High Fidelity, bro.
High Fidelity. Maybe every generation does this, but it seemed in the '90s you still had to go find out about people. You had to go to the video store. Like, I've seen
Right.
that video cover 100 times. I've never rented it. Fuck it. I'm gonna go rent Mallrats. I'm gonna go see what this movie actually is. And you had to go kind of discover it on your own, or your friends would tell you about it. And so
And
you had to,
I get to do that again because my wife is like grew up super like conservative Christian Korean, and so her family not only was like not watching adult stuff, they weren't watching American shit. So like we just watched Armageddon last night for the first
Oh,
time
wow.
ever. I've seen it a billion times, but she'd never seen it. You know, there's so many things that just, you know, for the first 20 years of her life, she just never encountered things that
oh, interesting.
are in the culture so dense that people make constant references to it that go right over her head. Cause she's like, I never even saw that movie. I don't know
Mhm.
anything about it, but it's not annoying to me. For me, it's so fun because I get to go back and luckily she has an appetite to experience it now. I'm like, let's watch it. Let's watch Clerks, which I haven't seen in 10 years, but let's fucking
Mhm.
check it out and show her this. So yeah, I love that. I love and I think, you know, that's part of too, like I was a latchkey kid. Like my parents were divorced really young and they both worked like 60-hour-a-week jobs. I came home from school to my empty house. And what are you going to do, man? You're going to flip through cable. You're going to go through your
Yeah.
parents' tape collections and see what you haven't seen yet and just
Yeah.
try to fill the time. I certainly wasn't going to do my fucking homework.
Right. Yeah, I have a similar experience. My parents were around all the time. However, like they were like strict with the movies. They were like, it was a big debate when it became time to see rated R movies. But we had TV and it was just nonstop flipping channels.
Right.
Me and my brother would be at the age where MTV was not allowed. However, we could watch it with the sound low, and as soon as someone would come in the room, we figured out how to flip the channel real quick, and then we could stay hidden like that. But also, you would flip channels, and then you would find shit. You'd be like, "What's this? What's this?" Like with streaming, you click what you want to watch. Flipping channels, you're like, oh wait, this is 25 minutes into The Fugitive. All right, I'm watching this. Right. When I'm renting this, when it comes back, when I see it at Blockbuster, so I can watch the beginning of it.
And someone has to tell you that U.S. Marshals is a sequel.
Right. You have to discover.
They don't just say that shit.
They don't say that. They don't say that at all. Yeah, you're like, isn't that such and such from that other movie? You're doing all this like movie math in your head. And like, I would just watch TV all the time. And speaking to the stand-up thing, I think with stand-ups, once you become online, like as a kid, 13 years old, where you can communicate with your parents, you regurgitate the stand-up because it's an adult thought. And it's funny. And humor is almost a form of intelligence. And it becomes a way of you to communicate with adults. Yeah. But then you said it perfectly. At some point, they get tired of your shit. They don't want to hear you. They don't want to hear you do the Garofalo, the Bill Maher, the political humor, but your friends still do. Yes. So now you take it to your friends, and that becomes your currency. And I was the same way with stand-up. I would watch Comedy Central. Whatever was on, I watched. And I would watch Geraldo, Patton Oswalt. But the one that would like intrigue me was this comic named Mitch Fatel. And I don't know Mitch Fatel. He's a New York guy, but he almost speaks in a baby cartoon voice, and it's totally bizarre. And I just couldn't get enough of it that this was this person's thing. And of course, like I think like that's how this guy actually is. I don't think he's really putting on an act. I think that's how this guy is. And I'm like, what the hell is with this guy? And it was just entirely fascinating that this was a thing, and people laugh at it, and people come to see this weirdo do these weird sort of lyrical rhymes and jokes and stuff.
I feel like I've heard that name before. Like someone brought it to me and I was surprised I hadn't heard it. And I still don't think I've seen. I'm gonna have to look that up after this interview.
Yeah, I think you'll probably recognize the name and the voice once you see and hear him. So yeah, it definitely rings a bell with me when you say like, oh, I watch TV or I watch movies. And essentially that is your upbringing. I was like that all the way through college as well. I would just come home from classes and I'm like, let me just turn on the TV and I'll just watch whatever.
Well, I don't know if you had HBO in the 90s, but man, the stand-up
we had the HBO free month. Oh yeah.
Dude. I mean, I was just the other day, I was showing my wife Dana Gould, who is like when his half hour on HBO in the 90s was like such a hit for me and my friends. And it was one of those things that it separated us from a lot of other kids, because there was plenty of other kids who were still watching fucking cartoons. And I mean, I've fucked with some cartoons from time to time, but I was already into that at such an early age. It really helps you figure out who your people are at school, because you go to school and you throw out like, hey, I watched fucking Dave Chappelle's half hour HBO, or I watched, I'm trying to think of somebody else, Jeff Garlin. There's someone who was not famous when I was talking about him in the 90s. He had a great Comedy or not Comedy Central, HBO half hour. Mm-hmm. And I went to school and was like, Jeff Garlin? And everyone's like, we don't even know. We're not watching stand up. And if we did, we would not know who the fuck that is at all. Later, he blew up on Curb, but it was a cool way to kind of use that to go to school and see like who else is allowed to watch adult shit. Oh yeah. And who else is just like, hey man, we watch football with our dads, and then maybe we fuck with Cartoon Network, but we might be watching Boy Meets World, or we might be watching other stuff that skews a little younger, maybe Saved by the Bell. But we're not on HBO at 1 o'clock in the morning, under the covers trying to sneak a fucking HBO half hour comedy special about jokes about dating in your late 20s. Why is that interesting to you? And at the time, I couldn't have told you why. I think you're right, though. I think it's like, it feels like you are sitting at the adults table at like Thanksgiving. Like when you watch, you're like, everyone seems to be laughing at this. I kind of got the intonation of why it's funny, but I don't totally get it until way later. But
Yeah.
it feels like you're getting to hang out with adults, which when I was a kid, a lot of other kids felt like they wanted to stay kids forever. And from as young as I can remember, you talk about like, what were my interests and what did I want to do? All I wanted when I was a kid was to not be a kid anymore. I was like, they don't let me do anything.
Right.
The teachers are always telling me where to go and what to do, and don't sit down and be quiet and don't crack jokes. And it just felt like, when am I going to get to do what I want to do? The adults seem to get to do whatever the fuck they want all the time. Like, of course not, but it felt that way.
Yeah.
And it was the same way when I got like my first car. I remember driving in my first car. I got my car late for a Texas kid. I was 17, and I was like, I got in my car and was like driving to my friend's house for the first time by myself in my own car with my driver's license. And it dawned on me, I was like, I can fucking stop to pee whenever the fuck I want.
Oh yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
What? Especially if you grew up with a dad who was like, hold it. It was like,
yeah,
next level. I to this day have like a nervous bladder because my family was so like, hold it forever. And so the first time I was able to do that, and everything that's happened to me in my adult life where like I got to drink, or I got to go into this venue without a fucking stamp on my wrist, or what, everything that was like a little badge of adulthood. Oh my God, you couldn't pay me to go back. That's like the biggest shit. And I've never been someone who like overly romanticizes being a child, because I've never stopped being an immature imagination and sense of humor. But I've always wanted that. And that separates you, I think, as a kid, because a lot of kids are like not excited about that.
It makes total sense, though, that you would say that. Like you said, like you spent a lot of time by yourself. You were the youngest child. You're like, you want to grow up. You want to
tired of being a baby.
That independence. I share that. Yeah, you want to like be at the table. You want to be heard. You want to be listened to. You find people just like yourself. That makes sense. I had that too, but much later. You know, like I said, my parents are always around. I have two younger brothers, but like I did always want the independence. Like I went away to college, and you could have dropped me off anywhere for college. I just wanted to go away. And I was like, I got my car.
Especially from El Paso, dude. All due respect.
Yes. Well,
there's only so much to do in El Paso.
Well, you're from Austin. To us, Austin is El Paso's New York City. It's kind of like, we're like, I know a guy who moved away to Austin. And we're like, he did? What's it like? We were always behind. Like we got Starbucks maybe 8 years after everybody else did. And you better be sure as shit, we made a line around that Starbucks to get our Starbucks coffee circa 1999 or whenever it happened. Like we got shit. I totally
took it
late.
For granted. I totally took it for granted and couldn't wait to leave. Also because growing up in Austin is a little bit like growing up in a place like Las Vegas, where you're like, it's really fun as an adult, but when you're under 21, there's only so much shit in Austin that is fun to do, because most of what makes Austin really fun are the live music things that you can't go to till you're 18 or 21, or fucking getting drunk on 6th Street, which you can't fucking do till you're 21. So like being in high school in Austin, Texas was like, there's some theater, there's there's cool parks and stuff like that there. It's kind of a pretty place to be, but it felt boring as shit to me, man. I can't imagine El Paso in comparison. I've been in El Paso plenty of times.
We got a lot of law enforcement. We got a military base. We got border patrol. We got the police department. We got a lot of dirt. We got some mountains. Right. We got a college. We do have a college. We're not too good at sports.
Do they call it the Borderplex?
Our college?
Thing? Or no, the area, because like you have Las Cruces and Juarez.
Oh, right. We got we're in the border
kind
of
a
Las
little
Cruces.
Triad.
Yes, yeah. My joke is always, I grew up in a border town. It bordered Mexico and Mexico.
Right.
So
the other Mexico.
Right. So, and then I lived there. I went away to college and I moved back there for a couple years. And then I got to experience El Paso as an adult, which was a different experience in itself, too.
Same.
I always liked it. It's a different sort of city. I see why people like it. I see why some people want to move, too. But it is funny. Every time I go back, my parents will point out the new franchise that we got there. They're like, hey, we got Panda Express now. And
There's
we're
an
like,
In-N-Out.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if this is like, we're not country bumpkins or anything, but every time we would go on vacation, we would drive somewhere. We'd go to LA. We went to New York once. We went somewhere. And my dad would see a Chili's and he would go, hey, they got a Chili's here. All the time he would say that like it's a miracle that a franchise could open up a business in two different cities. So El Paso has its charm, but I wanted to go see other stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to be on my own and do my own thing for a while. And I loved it. I couldn't get enough. I was king of cable TV.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to do anything. I wanted to watch TV essentially. I remember I would just throw out things in high school and I'm like, anybody ever seen the Ben Stiller show? And then like one person would raise their hand and then you would talk about that for the next 6.5 weeks during school. But well, you mentioned you were a theater kid. You were into theater in high school. What productions did your school put on? Because I was not a theater guy. My brother was into theater and some friends. So I got to see all the plays and they would talk about what production was going to put on and what they wanted to have put on. What plays did you do in high school?
I had a really cool relationship to theater starting in middle school because I played football for about 2 months. I dislocated my Achilles tendon, which is still one of the worst injuries I've had in my whole life. And was out. I was out of the fucking doing football, which I was never supposed to do in the first place. I'm not a sports guy. I don't pay attention to no, I've never paid attention to sports. I'm pretty good at knowing which cities each franchise is in. I have that like memorized, but I don't know players. I don't know histories of teams.
But
I was a Nolan Ryan fan. Well, because I'm from Texas and my dad was like, I want to go to games.
You got to attempt sports. You're right.
I didn't give a shit. I was like, I played t-ball and then I played football because my dad wanted me to. And I hated it. I never liked it. And I got hurt and it was almost like a blessing of like, great, now I'm out. I don't have to do this shit ever again. And my best friend at the time was really still my best friend. He was my best man at my wedding. But he had already gotten into theater and in middle school, he was taking theater classes and he got involved in a community theater in our neighborhood. And one of the main people at that community theater that had been there for a long time was the theater teacher at our middle school. So when I was in 8th grade, I started doing theater at school, what little you could at that age. But I started going to that community theater and I did every show in the season. If I wasn't in the show, I was in the light booth doing the lights or the sound or something. I just became obsessed with it because I was like, the people at the community theater knew who David Cross was. The people, they were in the arts. They were in that kind of more, I don't know what you'd call it, but a bit alternative as far as that stuff goes. And my parents were way more mainstream. They didn't know what was going on in any kind of alt scene. And so I kind of had this second home away from home, and community theater was the thing that I told you I was kind of lost. I was lost until I found that community theater. And then when I went to high school, I had already been involved with like 8 plays or something like that, different productions. And so when I got to high school, it was like almost like some people treat going to college for theater. I was like, now I'm gonna start taking it seriously. I'm gonna do the high school theater program. Let's see, what did I do that's like at all notable or interesting? The first musical I was ever in was Guys and Dolls Jr.
Oh, did like Guys and Dolls Jr. Wow.
Yeah, in Georgetown, Texas. And it was all kids between the ages of like 12 to like 16. And we put on a full, pretty close to full production of Guys and Dolls that still to this day I have like memories of. It's just a really fun time. I love that play. It's one of the older pieces of theater that I really enjoy. I did a lot of Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing, Merry Wives of Windsor and all that stuff. I became a huge nerd about Shakespeare. And then like my senior year at Pflugerville High School outside Austin, I was Cogsworth in Beauty and the Beast, the clock.
Oh, wow.
So I got to wear the big clock with the like pendulum thing and run around bitching at Lumiere for getting us into trouble. And that was a fucking blast. That was a really cool show. And so, yeah, but I assumed I wasn't going to go to college at all because I was such a shit student in high school, like 2.1 GPA. I was in like the bottom fifth of my graduating class. Dude, yeah, bad. Like I didn't go to class. I didn't do homework. I would get like an A on every test and then do none of my homework and pass the class with a D+. And so I just assumed like, well, you know, college and shit, that's not going to happen for me because I'm a fucking terrible student. I went to community college because I felt like I was supposed to, hated that. And then the same kid in 8th grade who got me into community theater was going to this school in North Carolina who was like, you might want to think about going here. And I was like, dude, I don't fucking do school, man. I hate school. And he was like, here's the thing about this program. You can come here and get a degree. Well, kind of. It's more of an arts diploma. They offered both, but they have 2 programs. You can get a bachelor's degree here, but they have this other program called an arts diploma where you can get all of the arts training. It's like Juilliard level acting training, no academic classes, no math, no science, no nothing. And you spend 10 a.m. in the morning till 11 p.m. at night in rehearsals, singing, dancing, acting, you know, stage combat, all this shit. And no one's going to make you do any homework that's not related to the arts classes. And I was like, I didn't know that was a fucking thing at all.
Yeah.
So, very long story, boring. I actually started at that school as a lighting design major because I've been doing that for so long. And my plan was to do like concerts and lighting on cruise ships and stuff like that and do lighting design. But while I was on that campus, I fell in love with the drama school that I thought no fucking way they'll ever let me into this. I'm not good enough. But I got in front of the dean. I performed, I directed, I did some different shit. And eventually, like I said, like weaseled my way into the drama school. And that became like one of the greatest experiences of my life and really pulled me out of this rut that I was convinced for most of my life I would always be nobody because I was always such a screw up at stuff. But I got into that program, which was crazy on its own. And then while I was in it, I did a bunch of plays and musicals and projects and things that got incredibly good reception. And I was like, oh shit, am I one of these like close to kind of my hero vibe of like Kevin Smith, who's like, I'm not going to go to school. I'm just going to start making the shit that I want to make. And it's good because I have been studying how to make good shit my whole life by watching fucking TV, staying up all night watching comedy, doing this stuff. And it did wonders for my confidence and why I regularly scream to my nephews and other kids I know. I'm like, you know, if I need to go to college, I went to college, but it was a weird, different kind of college. And it didn't give me a degree. I don't have a degree to this day. I don't have a like bachelor's degree. No one has asked this whole time since I left.
That's cool. We'll cut this part out, Rob. Don't worry about it.
Sure. You don't have to tell anybody. No, nobody cares. I also went to one of the best schools like in the world for drama, like Hollywood Reporter ranked like 5th best in the world every year. Nobody cares that I went there. It's never come up. It's about the experience and the training I got, not the paper, not the name. It's not Juilliard. It's not NYU. It's not UCLA. It's not one of those things that you get to say it and everyone's like, oh, wow. You're like University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And people are like, okay. And then I start naming the people who also went there and they're like,
go Tar Heels.
Yeah. Right. No. We're the Pickles, even cooler.
Pickles. Wow.
That's true. That's our mascot. We're the Fighting
That's an
Pickles.
art school for you. This ridiculous mascot name. It's like, all right, does everything have to be ironic?
Appropriately, just, like with our massive like LBGT population, you just pick like the most phallic thing you could find. And that's
that's
appropriate. But it was great. But I mean, people don't realize that school's been churning out incredibly talented people forever, but they didn't make the school famous. I mean, Danny McBride, David Gordon Green, Missy Pyle, fucking Jonathan Majors, who just has blown up in the MCU. He's like the bad guy in the new Ant-Man. Elizabeth Lail, who's the star of the show You in its first season. So many big, huge people, but it doesn't turn that school into a Juilliard name. Yeah. So it was kind of like a hidden gem, and it really like was a great experience. But to get back to your point, it didn't adjust what I always wanted, which was to work in television. That's what I wanted to do. Yeah. But I didn't know how to go to TV school. So I went to theater school because I'd always done theater. And when I graduated, it was like, all right, you know, the faculty's like, all right, man, you're about to graduate. Like, what do you want to do? What are you going to go run off and do Broadway? You're going to go to a regional theater, do a tour, try to get a job in that area. And I was like, no, I want to work in TV. And they were like, ooh, sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had no idea because they knew kind of how to help actors get a job. But I was in the directing program in the drama school. So like directing theater was my major. And to say I'm going to go work in television, no one knew what to tell me. And I got so lucky that I got that Comedy Central job like 2 months after I graduated. It was complete kismet. And since then I've been working in TV.
Yeah, that's very lucky. I mean, isn't that par for the course? You finish your time at an art school and they're like, all right, how do I work in the industry? Oh, we don't know.
Oh, I have no idea. Well, if you're not going to do theater, we don't know what to tell you.
To say. Yeah, they legitimately do not have an answer because their job is the 4-year school, and working in the arts is strange. You don't need college. You need some sort of experience, and as soon as you get in there day one, it is a rat race to get in there. And then you mentioned it, you know, before, maybe a generation before us, it was like, how do you get a good job? You go to college. And then it became for us, we were like, okay, I've seen people make their own stuff, independent filmmakers, entrepreneurs. Okay, you can make your own things. And now I think the generation is like, let me watch a DIY on YouTube. Let me learn how to build a house on YouTube. So now we're like, okay, you don't need to go to college. Now you don't need to leave your room. It can be, you can educate yourself in a sense.
The democratization of education, which is wonderful, good.
It's good. It's good. I've done it myself. Like when you mentioned, like you wanted to start up the YouTube show, I was the same way. How do I start a YouTube show? Straight onto YouTube, and I type in, what microphone do I buy? How do I light one person, background? And it's just nonstop. It's back to me watching endless amounts of cable TV. It's just typing in something, trying to watch it, be like, oh, I can buy that, or oh, I could make that. I can make that look like that. Okay, I messed that up. Okay, I'll type in something else next time. Maybe I can see how to do that. It is just nonstop learn as you go, which, you know, I think is a good thing, but I think you do lose the potential of a mentorship, learning from somebody hands-on. And maybe that is still the holy grail of finding out how to progress in an industry. Is you do need help. You do need some sort of ladder to try and lend an ear to, or to get a foot in the door somehow, some way. It's always tough. It's tough to get in a competitive market. Beyond that, I have no thoughts on the matter.
It's true, man. I mean, I've been split between the two because other than taking like a year and a half off to teach in North Carolina, which I did in the middle of like since I graduated, I
get the teacher vibes off of you, Rob. That makes sense. I can see that.
I'm gonna take that as a compliment.
Yeah,
it's no, I had a great time teaching. And the cool thing was I got to teach at a private school for kids with learning disabilities. So I was working with kids that had like bad ADD like I did, kids that didn't want to do their fucking homework, kids with autism and dysgraphia and dyslexia. And that was a fucking great experience. It's not something I was ready to do for a long, long time because I don't have the overall patience for it. But I had a great time doing that. And then I moved to LA, and I've been pretty fortunate. I want to give equal credit to both fortune and my hard work to stay in television. I've been working in television for, almost 10 years now. And I love it. I mean, it was one of those, it's one of the, man, it's one of the many things that, like you said, I said out loud to people in my life, this is what I want. No one knew how to help. So I had to go figure it out, you know, but I did, because it is figure outable. It's not like impossible. It's not easy, but the best shit in life is not.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite quotes is from, it's so cool that they're bringing this back as a show too, but I love the movie A League of Their Own.
Oh,
And,
yeah. I watched it
movie.
within the last year. That's a funny movie.
It's a great movie. And there's
one
a
of the
great
rare
line.
Tom Hanks is a dick movies.
Yes, absolutely. And he's and one of my favorite Tom Hanks performances, and I'm about to quote him in that movie, when Gina Davis is trying to quit, like right before the World Series, she's trying to go back with like Bill Pullman. And he's like, I don't understand how you could do this, like when you're so good. And she says, it just got too hard. And he says, if it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great. And I was like, that has stuck with me my whole life, which I think it's so true. Like anything that is really gratifying and just feels good to accomplish and brings you fulfillment and satisfaction in life, whether it's in relationships or your work or your art, it's hard. And if it's not hard, it's not going to give you much. And so anytime I feel that like, fuck, I don't want to edit this video, or I can't get Adobe to Premiere to do what I want it to do, or, you know, no one's watching this TikTok, or no one's doing whatever my frustration is, or I don't have a job. I remind myself that it's like the hard is what makes it great. And it's going to be rewarding when you overcome that difficulty. It keeps me waking up, dude.
I do like that scene as well. I mean, I grew up in the sports world. I was a cyclist, and my goal was my goal was to be a professional cyclist. That's how I ended up in Utah. And I never got there. I got pretty close a couple of times, but just the same thing to what you're speaking of. There is two mindsets. There's glass half full mindset and there's glass half empty mindset. And you can get in a cycling race and, you know, it's a 200 guy field, and the glass half empty guy is gonna be like, I'm not going to make top 10. I'm not going to make the selection. There's 200 guys in here. The half full guy goes, somebody's winning this race. Might as well be me. You know, so you kind of have that no matter what the competitive field is, or you're like, I'm going to send my resume to these teams, these clubs, and then someone will go, you know how many resumes get sent to that club? And then you're like, you're right, I quit. Or it would be like, well, they're going to pick mine. I knew guys who had level 10 confidence, level 3 skill. Those guys got way further than me with level 6 skill, you know, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, but I gotta put it to the side, and I gotta say, okay, they're doing something right. I gotta figure out what they're doing. I have no idea how. And for me, it was just keep showing up, send resumes, show up to the races I don't want to do. Just keep showing up and something will happen. And it's the same. I do the same thing with stand up, is I just keep showing up. I just keep emailing. And I've seen so many people quit. I've seen so many people like, remember that one guy? That guy was funny. Where is he? Oh, he quit. Same way with cycling. I would get out of the juniors, out of the 18 and under, and I'd be like, all right, if I'm going to do the 19 plus, man, this guy was strong as an 18-year-old. Oh, he's going to be. What happened to that guy? Oh, no, he's not racing anymore.
Same way with porn, Pat. You're like, where'd she go? She was so talented.
It all comes back to porn. That's right. It's just it's a longevity thing with porn.
Yes. No, you're right. And you have to be aware too of, I always say, like, resist the bucket of crabs. You know about the bucket of crabs effect?
No, I don't know this.
Dude, every fucking podcast I've ever hosted or have been on, it ends up coming up because it's so relevant. This is a real, like, natural phenomenon that happens. It is the bucket of crabs effect is basically like, if you are fishing for crabs or crabbing, if you fucking trying to catch crabs and you get a bunch of them in a bucket, and one of them tries to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs will grab him by his legs and pull his ass back down into the bucket. Like, you're not getting out of here. If we're stuck here, you're stuck here, motherfucker. Yeah. And it is it is a real thing that happens. That person who told you, do you know how many emails they get or resumes they get or submissions they get? All those people trying to talk you out of your optimism are the other crabs in the bucket. What good does it do you to talk someone else out of doing something that they have enthusiasm for? Like Kevin Smith, we've brought his movies up a few times in this. He says in a bunch of his like talkbacks, he used to say it a lot. I hear it from him less, but he still says it. It costs you nothing to encourage an artist. And for that matter, it costs you nothing to encourage anyone. Why be the voice of, I don't know, man, I wouldn't waste my time, or that's really uphill, or like, why?
So
why
expensive.
even say shit like that?
Right.
Why not just say like, oh, you want to do that and you actually care about something and you're excited about something? Go get it, dude. Good luck. I hope it works out for you.
I'm sure there are those people who have encouraged us throughout our lives. For some reason, I don't remember any of them. I remember the negative ones the most. I remember I wanted to apply to this. I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe it's to my mindset or like a negative personality, but those ones stick in the most. I wanted to apply for a national cycling camp for riders under 23 years old. And someone asked me, what are you going to do this? I was like, oh, I'm going to apply to that camp. And he looked up at me and he shook his head. He just shook his head no at me. And
that guy.
Like, fuck you, man. I'm applying. So much of my motivation is anger based. I don't know if that's very healthy of a way to have it, because it works in sports because all you do is what you're doing, but harder. I don't know how it works in a creative sense, but so much is me saying like, I want to one day tell that guy, fuck you. Of course, this was 20 years ago. So
ask Mark Maron.
Yeah. Yeah. The one guy who shook his head, that was 20 years ago. So he might've won the battle. Okay. I'll give him that, but still sticks in my craw, Rob Morris.
Right. Dude. Yeah. Tell the crabs to go fuck themselves. And it took me a long time to realize that's what was happening, because sometimes it's just the guy who shakes his head, right? Who's like, I don't know about that, man. I wouldn't. Yeah. And then there are the people who are being crabs, but you don't realize it because it almost is veiled in support, where they're like, I don't know, Pat, you might want to think about a backup plan, or, you know, I believe in you and I love that you love that, but it's really competitive and you might want to think about blah, blah. And you're like, truthfully, as much as those people might be trying to come from a good place, they're still fucking doing the crab shit where they're trying to talk you out of the thing that you care about. And those are the people who talk about how Mondays suck. Those are the people who talk about how they're working for the weekend. Yeah. Those are the people who hate their fucking jobs and do nothing about it because they accept a level of dissatisfaction as part of life, which I have my entire life, as far as I can remember, been like, no, fuck that. I don't say why. Why would I go do a thing that I fucking hate for 5 out of 7 days of the week so that I can drink myself to sleep for the other 2 days of the week? Yeah.
Well, same thing, speaking to the El Paso thing, you know, I worked in a bicycle store in El Paso, and I would just sort of like, I'll work here a couple years and then I'll move, or, you know, whatever. And I would look around and I would say like, don't you guys want to do something? They're like, this shouldn't be our last job working at a bike store. Don't you guys want to, like, you know, do you have any goals? I always had goals. I had a lot of ambition. I didn't have a lot of path into those ambitions, but I had a lot of like, I want to go here. I want to do this, and I'll figure it out on the way. So same thing, just thinking like there was something I wanted to do, but you would hear the negative, like, it's expensive. You don't want to do that. A lot of people apply to that, you know. Guy shook his head at me. Shook his head at me. I did get into that camp, by the way. But yeah, I just remember him. Yeah, I got into that national camp. Good for you. Yeah, I got in. But yeah, I remember he looked up at me and he was like, still remember it to this day.
You'll never forget that. And fuck that guy for putting that in your head.
Yeah, that's 100%. Right. I was just like, what a response.
Dude, I got in trouble one time. So after I dropped out of community college, I had this period. It was definitely like one of the darkest periods of my life. I was dating a girl who was going to a really prestigious university, like who was my high school girlfriend. And she was like going to a great university. She was in sophomore year. I had dropped out of community college. I felt like such a fucking loser. And I got a job my entire family's in automotive repair. They work at like the Caliber Collision Centers in Austin, and have moved around fixing cars my whole life. That's what my whole family's done. Mom, dad, stepdad, stepmom, everybody. And so when I dropped out of community college, I got a job at the body shop because fucking I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And this was like in this period is when my friend eventually came to me and was like, you should come to North Carolina. But I had this whole, it's probably like almost a year where I was just like, I don't know. I guess I'll just do this. I'll do what everyone else in my family does.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble once. My boss called me into his office and he said, hey man, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but you've been talking to the painter, like the body shop, like the painter. And I was like, his name was Daniel. Is this black dude, and he'd been working there for a few years. He was in his like late 30s, and he was like, you've been talking to the painter? And I was like, I mean, yeah, sometimes. And he's like, I feel like I overheard you the other day talking to him about music. And I was like, I didn't really remember the conversation. So I was like, yeah, I think so. And then he goes, can't do that, man. And then it clicked. I remembered what the conversation was. And what it was, I was talking to the painter out by the paint booth one day, and he was talking. He asked me, he's like, you do theater sometimes? And I was like, yeah. And sometimes on the weekends and at night. And he goes, man, I always wanted to make music. And I was like, that's cool. He was like, man, when I was in high school, I hated high school, but I would like drum out beats on the desk. And I always thought maybe I'd be a DJ or working like producing or something. And I said, do it. Fucking bro, if you don't want to be painting cars anymore, don't paint cars. Fucking go make music, dude. You know, there's programs you can go to. You could just go get a job as an engineer's assistant and work your way up. Like there's ways to do it. And I was very encouraging of him. And what my boss was saying was, he's a good painter and I don't want to lose him. Stop trying to encourage him to follow his dreams. He's going to quit. Yeah. Then I have to replace him. And I was like, I told him okay and walked out of the office. But in my head, I was like, I like my boss, but fuck him. No, I'm not going to stop encouraging people that have ambitions.
Sometimes
they can stay in a job they don't want.
Sometimes discouraging someone has a practical element. Like he just wanted to keep his employee, which
hire another
I'm sure
painter, you coward.
Yeah, which I'm sure he was not paid a great living. I'm sure you can find another painter. But that is funny. It's like, quit speaking to the locals, young Rob Morris, about the wonders of the big city.
At the same time, there was a guy who worked in the parts department who I had the opposite conversation with, like you said about the bike shop, where he was just a few years older than me. I was probably like 19, 20, and he was like 23, and he was a Mexican dude who was from Austin, and he lived with his mom still and his family and his like brothers, sisters, cousins, whatever. And I was like at lunch with him one day, and I was like, Johnny, do you ever want to do something else or like leave here? And my brain was off daydreaming, and I was like, you ever want to get the fuck out of Austin? And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like leave Austin, like live somewhere else.
Like Tyler?
Yeah, he was like Houston? And I was
like lake? Go to the lake?
Bro, no, I'm like, do you ever want to like move to Germany or move to New York or go to London or I don't know, Japan? So just experience something else. And he was like, fuck no. He was like, he goes, I live near my mom. She cooks for me. I have my whole thing here. I like it here. I would never. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, all right, boss, keep Johnny and let Daniel go make music if that's what he wants to do. Like, and I've kept that attitude since then. I work on a TV show now, and we have a great production coordinator who like makes sure people get COVID tests and sends out the call sheet. And she has a very like at the computer job. She's also a stand-up, and I found her comedy online on her Instagram, and she's fucking funny. And our show is a comedy show. And I was like, hey, everybody, do you guys know Josie's really funny? And they were like, no, the call sheet girl. And I was like, she's not just people are more than the thing you see them doing at the thing they're getting a paycheck for. Like you have to have the imagination to be like, what do they want? What do they want to do? We ended up with, a day where my assistant, because I have an assistant on my shoots because I'm a director and producer. My assistant was sick or had vacation. He was on vacation. He had a vacation. We weren't supposed to have a shoot. It ended up getting scheduled on that day. So I had no assistant. And I asked him, I was like, can I get Josie as my assistant for the day? she came on set, which we do it remotely, but she came on set on Zoom.
Mhm.
She's pitching me jokes that are fucking great. I'm putting them in the show. They're making it on air. And now we have her talents being utilized. And now she's on the track to be a producer and writer on our show later when a spot opens up. And that never would have happened if I hadn't seen her Instagram, reached out, suggested her for the job. And so, dude, I guess my
that's that DIY Rob Morris right back at it.
I've always been like, fucking encourage them, costs nothing.
That's
like,
right.
Help people do what they want to do. Why not?
Yeah, Josie the call sheet girl. That's funny. When I started,
and then get another call sheet chick. How hard is that?
Call sheet chick. That's funny. When I started comedy in Salt Lake City, I worked at more bike stores, of course. And then at some point, I would be doing comedy and people would see me and they go, "Hey, bike store guy." I was bike store guy. That was just who I was. That was my job. Right. Within the community, I'd been there a few years. I was bike store guy.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with having
nothing wrong at all. It's just how I was known. I was just bike store guy. When did stand-up start for you then? Like, I see the theater, I see the movie, I see the DIY. When did you go on stage and say, do some stand-up comedy?
I was working at Comedy Central and I was finally like knee deep in actually doing TV, and I was writing. I was a writer there. That's like what I did at Comedy Central. I was like a writer and an assistant and a few different jobs, but I was getting to like come up with jokes and submit them for things and then have big names say them on TV. And I was like, holy shit. But I ended up quitting that job because it was a cubicle job and I wanted to be on set. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be in the room while it was happening. And I spent a whole year there working in a cubicle, same one every day. And I'm not programmed for that shit. And so I went to my boss and I was like, this has been a dream, but also kind of a nightmare because I can't sit in this box anymore. And I was like, and it was in New York. And I was like, I think I want to go to LA. And when I quit, I told him that I wanted to go to LA, and he was like, what do you think you're going to do out there? And I was like, well, I want to work in TV. I want to keep working in TV, but I want to get involved in comedy. And I don't know if that means stand up or improv or what. I've always been we've talked about fucking stand up nerd since I was a kid, but I don't know if that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I was so confused about it. And he said, I'll always remember this. I say this on a lot of podcasts too, because he had been working at Comedy Central, my boss, for like 20 years, and he'd worked with everybody, fucking from Al Madrigal to Kevin Hart to fucking Samantha Bee, everybody. And so he really knew what he was talking about. And when I left and I said I want to do comedy, maybe stand up, he's like, I'll tell you this from my experience. And this is his words, not mine. So I'm not stroking my own ego here. This is what he said. He was like, I think you are a funnier person than most people who try to do stand up. But historically, my experience has been that stand-ups are by and large not very happy people on a day-to-day basis. Good luck. And I've never forgotten that, because I was like, he was basically like, you could do it and you'd probably be good at it. I don't know if you're going to get what you want out of it. And I was like, I really took that to heart. And when I got out to LA, I probably spent like 2 or 3 months getting my footing. But as soon as I could, I went to an open mic back when they used to do them at the El Cid on Sunset.
Oh yeah. I remember that one.
And that was the first one I ever went to. And I just told a story because I didn't know how to write jokes really. Yeah. And I told a story about getting attacked by an emu when I was a kid, which is true. And I got laughs, and I was like, okay, this will work. Like I'm going to try this. And so I was like 26. This was like 2016, I think, is when I landed. And but it was tough because I really quickly got jobs in TV doing like PA work, and I would work 12-hour days for, all fucking week. And so then I started going to Flappers, and I started doing like the only ones I could make were like the fucking Friday, Saturday, like midnight mics. And I got really worn out going to Flappers trying to get in the pulled out of the bucket at midnight, and I would stay there till 1 a.m. and not get called and be like, I got a 12-hour day tomorrow. I just don't know I could do this.
Yeah.
Like I can't, I don't know. And that's when I started to be like, maybe I don't have room in my life for stand up because I can't quit my job. I have to pay my bills. And I couldn't find mics that I could get up. And so, I really fell in love with the pay to play shit. I was like, I get why people don't like this. I totally understand why they don't want to pay for it. But to me, to get in and out in an hour, guaranteed 5-minute set, let's go. For 9 comics, at least I'm on the stage telling the joke, seeing if anybody reacts, something. And I really got into it. So I started doing like Fourth Wall. And then I went to the Wednesday. I started trying to, when I had the day off, go to the Wednesday audition mic at Flappers. And the first time I went ever, I booked Uncle Clyde's. And
their comedy competition.
Yeah, I did. And it's so tough because like, as for all the things people say about Flappers, I've always loved that club, and I've always really favored my experience there. And I hear some of the things that people have said, and I can understand a lot of the things that people say where they take issue with some of the ways that it works. But for me, and I said this to Dave and Barbara both at one point, I was like,
owners of Flappers. Yeah.
I was like, fucking thank you for being an access point, because it felt like I could get in. It felt like I could participate. You know, it was hard to do the mics, but with the audition, I booked Uncle Clyde's and I went to the finals. Like I won all my different rounds, and then I got to be in the finals in December, November, whatever the fuck it was. And doing those bringer shows in the main room with a full house gave me confidence I never would have gotten just dicking around at mics for several years. It made me feel like I'm not a fraud, way less imposter syndrome. It felt like, you know, and I would, because I'm an idiot, I did a different set at every round of Uncle Clyde's, even though they said, don't do that. Once you find it works, just keep tweaking. But I didn't know who I was as a comic. And the audition set that I did, the one that got me on Uncle Clyde's that I did repeat in the first round of the competition, was so random. It was like one joke about Trump, one thing with a pun, I fucking brand new at stand up. To this day, the most successful real clip of my stand up that exists is on my Instagram, and it is a joke from that first round of Uncle Clyde's back when I had no idea. Yeah, it's something like 65,000 views. I get new likes on it every single day. And it is a great testament to one of the reasons why I do so much less stand up now, and haven't done it since I was running the club in Austin. I don't think stand up, at least at this point in my life, until I have a different mindset about it, is the right thing for me. And I learned this from doing Uncle Clyde's, and then I learned it from doing more and more stand up. I don't like telling the same joke again. Yeah. It's not fun for me. I say it once, it gets a laugh, and I want to burn it. I'm like that. I said that already. Next set, I want every set to be different. Yeah. And the idea of building an hour and then touring that hour and that being like a goal, I don't think I could do it, because I think I would do I would do that hour for the 4th time and be like, I'm done. Yeah. And I don't know that I trust my skills to be like a Godfrey, where I just do a different fucking hour every single time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You can't just do a new hour every time. I have a similar,
I don't know that mindset. I can do that.
I have a similar mindset. And to speak to the comedy landscape that is here, if people don't know, when you start out in comedy, you're always told you got to get on stage, get on stage, get on stage. That's the way you learn. You got to get on stage as much as possible. So you go, great, let me go to these open mics. The majority of open mic experience starting out is waiting. Right. So you are there hours upon hours to do 3 minutes, 5 minutes, maybe. And then you go to the next one, and there will be the same group of comics watching your set. So what instead of saying you need to get on stage. What the saying really is, you need to get in front of a crowd. So
Yeah.
the hard part becomes getting a crowd. That's where Flappers comes in for new comics is, okay, do a few auditions. We'll get you on a show. We'll get you on a weekday. Okay, we'll work you up to a Friday, and then you can get in front of the crowd. However, that has become exceedingly hard to get. So if you got people working out an act like you just mentioned, I'm doing the same act for the same people all the time. How am I going to work on these jokes when the mystery has been revealed already? I'm the same way, as I can never do the same set because these people have heard it. Or I'll say, I'm going to a different mic across town because it'll be a bunch of comics, but at least they will not have heard this set. The minute one comic walks in that I know or saw earlier in the week, the set's out the window. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. He's heard it. He's heard that stupid joke. So it really becomes a hard feat because you're looking for the crowd, not necessarily a stage. I've seen it a million times where you see the one comic do the same set over and over again, and you're like, man, why the hell does he keep doing that?
Right.
Why do you do that?
And Pat, that comic that walks in that ruins your spontaneity, I am that for myself because I already know what's going on, especially if a joke works. That's the worst part. I only want to tell jokes that aren't ready because the jokes, once they work and I feel like they're really tight and they kill, dude, if I was smart and I was still doing stand-up, that fucking joke that I have that's on the Instagram reels that is still getting attention, I would open with that every time. It works. It's tight. It has no fat on it. It is, I'll admit, it is a good joke. That's why it keeps getting attention. But I'm over it. Yeah. I wrote that joke like 7 years ago. I don't want to ever tell that joke again on stage ever. And so you shake
your head at that joke, Rob Morris.
I do. I'm proud of it. I think it's funny, but it's just like, for me, until I feel confident that, first of all, I'm not busy with all these other things in my life that take up so much. You're doing 2 different podcasts and doing this kind of stuff with you and, being with my wife and, trying to live my life, until I feel like there's room and desire in my life to get up and start being fresh every time, doing more crowd work, trying to work on bits, over time on different stages and try a new thing every single time. I don't know that stand-up is going to keep being a huge part of my personal performance career because, like I said, I'm shit at building an act. I've probably got 30 minutes worth of like stuff that I've over the years like tightened and I could be proud of. And if I really put it all together, I could go do it. And then I'd be a really reliable middle. I'm not doing the same fucking set at 7 and 9. I'm not, I can't.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a box. It's that cubicle again.
It is really hard because just in order to be successful at stand-up, you got to work at the same thing. And yet it's a public thing that you're working on. It's weird that you say that coming from theater, though, something that is so highly rehearsed and is so repeatable.
Over and over and over.
Like you said, Guys and Dolls has been done verbatim for the last 50 years.
Like 80.
There is no working the crowd in Guys and Dolls.
You're right. But that's also, Pat, that's also why I quit acting and went into directing, because for me, I got one of my best buddies from school, from college, Dave Brown, played Elder Price in The Book of Mormon, which is the lead role. And he played it on Broadway. I think he was the 4th guy to do it. And he did 8 shows a week for, I think over like 500 total performances. He played it in the West End. He played it on Broadway, the same show, the same part, the same songs every night. And I talked to him about it. He was in my wedding and I was like, dude, how do you do that and not wake up on day 3 and go, I'm bored. I can't do this anymore. But as a director, the cool part is rehearsal is all about building it and tweaking it into the thing that it's going to be. And you do repetition, but every time you run it, you change something or you make an adjustment or you note or whatever. Then when the show opens, the director's done. We leave, we go do something else. And now the actor and the stage manager, they have to run it. And that's where I kind of found in theater a way to marry my skill set and my enthusiasm with that problem of I don't like to do the same shit over and over again. And I will help you get it all the way to 100. And then when it's at 100, I'm cut. I'm out. You can stop paying.
Rob's out.
I'll go do something else.
What was Dave Brown's response to you saying, how do you do the repetitions over and over again? Did he have a response to it? Does he have a strategy? How does he handle it as an actor?
I think for him, it is a little bit about finding nuance and trying to find little ways to, you know, get a new feeling out of it. Always trying to improve, much like a comic, you know?
I see.
I don't think any comic will tell you that they bake something into a perfect thing and they just do it every single night. Sometimes the crowd's not responding to a bit, so you kind of cut it short and move on, or you plug things in, or you notice that, wow, they're a little tighter, or they're a little more conservative, or they're a little more drunk, or whatever. And so let's work with that. And there's anytime you have a live audience, there's definitely some organic work to be done. But I think it's just in his nature. I think you can do that or you can't. And it's just in some people's nature to be able to reproduce the same thing. Also, I think with a musical, it's a little easier. That's true. There's some excitement in there. I could see that. Well, and how many times do you listen to your favorite song, right? Like a million. You listen to it over and over again, especially when you're young. You're like, repeat, let's fucking go again. And you don't get tired. I was like that. I've still listened to my favorite music over and over. So I can see if I was a singer or a musician, let's play that track again. Oh, I love going ba-da-ba-ba-da on that section. I get it. But to me, telling jokes in particular, that's where I get like, well, I already did that joke. And like, yeah, but this is 100 new people who've not heard it. And I'm like, yeah, but I have already heard it.
Right. So, yeah, it is tricky. And that is sort of the beauty of stand-up, is that it can be different every time. Yeah. It can have the nuance. It's not like you can do Guys and Dolls and in the middle of it, you say like, hey, I'm going to riff a little bit. Right. Hey, what's your deal? Front row.
I got in trouble for that all the time in theater. That was my problem. Some directors are cool with it, but anytime I ever played a role when I was acting in theater, it was always like I was the ad lib guy. And lots of directors who were like, that's not what they wrote, man. You can't say that. That's not in the script. I'm like, yeah, but it got a laugh. And they're like, that's not the point.
Right. We're all depending on you, Rob, to give us these lines. It's like, hey, director, he's like, I know we're putting on Oklahoma, but how about just this night? We be from Tennessee. What do you think? Let's go for it.
They're not expecting that.
Not at all.
It doesn't fit into the song syllabically, but you work it out.
Well, Rob Morris, comedian. I end all my interviews with the famous Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game. For you, though, however, I like to give a theme to every single one.
I'm so excited to hear what my theme is. I'm like, what is he going to pick for me? I'm so excited.
Yes. Okay, I'm glad, because these are tough. But for you, Rob Morris, I mentioned earlier the highly stylish on-stage Rob Morris. For you, the theme is movies in which the characters are highly stylish.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Okay. So you know how the game works.
This is way harder than hockey, by the way.
Well, I knew you had an intricate knowledge of movies. So I was like, I got to dial it up a little bit.
That's fair. No, it's fair.
So I got to practice one for you to start out. So don't worry. You can get your feet wet here. You can score points by...
on this.
This is just practice, pure practice or rehearsal, to put it in your terms.
Sure.
Of it. I'm going to read you the description, and if you know the movie, you yell it out. You can score a point that way as well. And then we're going to put the two movies together, and you're going to guess which one has the higher Rotten Tomatoes score. So here is our practice round. No pressure. Here we go. Yell it out when you know it. A stockbroker full of ambition does whatever it takes to get to the top. Admiring the power of a corporate raider, he entices him into mentoring him. As the stockbroker becomes... From 1987, the movie is Wall Street. You got it, Rob. All right, you're off to a good start here in the practice round.
I waited because I was going to say that earlier, but I was like, are we going Wolf of Wall Street? Let me hear the full thing.
Oh,
you
right.
Had me at stockbroker.
Because the next line was going to be As the stockbroker becomes embroiled in greed and underhanded schemes, his decisions threaten the livelihood of his father. That would have been the giveaway
Yeah.
for Wall Street.
All right.
I always like in that movie the one line when Bud Fox is telling Gordon Gekko, like, okay, you took over my father's corporation, but why wreck it? And Gordon Gekko goes, because it's wreckable. That's it. That's his whole justification.
Fuck you. That's my name.
Because that's what I do. It's wreckable. Okay. Next movie. An amoral NYC teen has made it his goal to sleep with as many virgins as possible. While on the hunt for his latest conquest, he and his best friend smoke pot and steal from shops around town. Meanwhile, one of his early victims makes it her mission to save other girls from him. Before she has the chance to confront him, everything goes horribly wrong.
I can tell you for a fact that I haven't seen this movie.
Ooh.
I'm trying to guess what it is. Fuck. I'm feeling a 90s vibe or a late 80s vibe.
Okay.
I don't feel like after 2000 they make a movie where someone tries to sleep with as many virgins as they can. That's a little old school.
We forget how much of a Wild West was 90s movies. Like we talked about Armageddon earlier, which is essentially a music video into a movie form, which I love.
Great.
Which is great.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have this one. I don't even have a guess for this.
It's a practice round. Don't worry about it. The movie is from 1995. Kids.
Oh, sure.
Doesn't it start with the
I
kids
haven't
saying,
seen it.
Oh, you never saw Kids?
I do know the movie. I'm familiar with the movie, but I've never seen it. I read it on like Wikipedia because I had friends who told me about it.
Right.
So I went by, I couldn't find it somewhere. That's the one that's like banned in places, right?
Right. It got banned from theaters. It was a big deal in my childhood. I'm a little older than you, but
pretty serious sex in the movie.
Right. And it had a little bit of that at the 90s time Blair Witch thing where we're like, are these real kids?
Right.
Or are these actors? Because we didn't know yet. We didn't know that was Rosario Dawson.
Because they're like, did this really happen? Rosario Dawson. Yes.
Yeah. And it does open with the line when the kid says like, I love virgins. And you were just like, let's go. What's this movie about?
Yeah.
So your movies are Wall Street versus Kids for the practice round of the Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game. Which one has the higher Rotten Tomatoes score?
I'm going to say Wall Street, and I'll have my mind blown if that's not the case.
Wall Street is 78%.
That sounds
Kids is 47%. You got it right, Rob.
Oh,
correct. Practice round. Okay, now on to the real stuff here.
And do I get 3?
Right, we got 3 of them here. We've only got 1
points possible.
We've only got 1 perfect score in the history of Rotten Tomatoes, and we have had 1 0 score in the history of Rotten Tomatoes. Flapper's own Christina Marie Leonard scored 0 points in this very game.
That's impressive in its own way.
I think so. Okay, here we go. Movie number 1. Yell it out when you know it.
Yeah.
A man commands high prices for his services, living a lavish and emotionally unattached lifestyle. While secretly working for a pimp, he is assigned another man's wife. But when the requests turn violent, he becomes nervous. When the wife is found dead, no one is willing to testify on his behalf, and he finds himself as the prime suspect.
Wow.
I can see you're thinking.
I'm bamboozled, dude. I want to watch it. Again, it feels like an early 90s thing to me. Fuck. Give me the first 2 sentences one more time.
Okay. A man commands high prices for his services, living a lavish and emotionally unattached lifestyle.
And he's working for a pimp?
While secretly working for a pimp, he is assigned another man's wife. I feel like you're working out in your head a little bit here.
A little bit. I'm like, what does the guy do for a pimp? Isn't there just the pimp and then the prostitutes?
I think you're working out in your head. I think you're getting somewhere here.
He's the muscle. is the porn version of The Bodyguard.
I'd see that movie.
Yeah, me too.
The Booty Guard.
Yeah, fuck. You got to it before I could. I was trying to. Yeah. I don't got this one.
The movie is from 1980, American Gigolo.
Oh, okay. Richard
I thought
Gere.
I thought you were gonna put it together when you were like, "What would someone do for a pimp?" I thought it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, the light bulb's gonna go off."
I've also not seen that movie.
1980, a little bit older of
Yeah.
a movie.
Richard
like,
Gere, right?
Richard Gere,
Yeah.
and this was like, I don't know, would you say peak Richard Gere or like?
I hope not. The poor bastard. That was
Richard
a long
Gere-
time ago.
That's
Primal
true.
Fear might be in the
Primal Fear is a good Richard Gere. Pretty
That's
Woman is
probably-
good. He's
That's what I mean.
you
Like
know,
that's like 90. I would call
supporting.
early 90s like peak.
right, yeah. Like you got
That's like early Richard Gere.
You got American Gigolo, you got Officer and a Gentleman, Pretty Woman, Primal Fear, and I think it's a hard drop off after that.
Yeah, well, once he had that whole hamster in the ass thing or gerbil or whatever it was.
Yeah, hamster in the ass, that'll do it. I
Got
heard
me
that
too
rumor
in
in
my
high
20s.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we've all been there, Richard Gere.
Sure.
All right. Movie number 2. Here we go, Rob. Description. A young man craves a carefree lifestyle amid the blue waters and idyllic landscape of sun-drenched Italy in the late 1950s. He's tasked with bringing back an errant playboy back home to America by his father. However, the playboy and his ex parte girlfriend never suspect the dangerous extremes he's willing to go to make their lifestyle his own. Ooh, I'm stumping you with these.
Dude, you're doing really well. These are also like so far almost all these movies are before I was born.
That's true. That's true. A couple early ones.
Except for Kids. You got Kids was definitely
Kids,
I was
which you have not
7
seen, right? So
and
tough
would
one
not have been
there.
allowed to watch then.
Yeah, Kids. I definitely snuck watched Kids at a friend's house.
Yeah, I almost did. I almost watched it. Okay. One more time.
A young man craves a carefree lifestyle amid the blue waters and idyllic landscape of sun-drenched Italy in the late 1950s. He's tasked with bringing back an errant playboy back home to America by that playboy's father. However, the playboy and his expatriate girlfriend never suspect the dangerous extremes he's willing to go to make their lifestyle his own.
It feels like one of the stories in True Romance, but that's not the whole plot line. So that's not right. When he first started saying like 50s Italy, I was like, Godfather 2? But that's not the plot line of Godfather 2 at all.
No, not the plot.
It also reminds me of the movie The Rundown with The Rock, where he has to go to South America to get Sean William Scott. I don't know. Yeah, he stumped me.
The movie is from 1999, The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, shit. Yeah, Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that either.
Stylish.
God damn it.
Stylish, Rob.
Yeah,
Stylish
that's
with
true.
the clothes.
Matt Damon and what's the homie, the English guy?
Jude Law.
Yeah.
Jude Law, that's right. Matt Damon kills him.
All these fucking movies I haven't seen.
You haven't seen that one? Interesting.
No,
you got
I
a young Philip Seymour Hoffman
Yeah.
in there when Tom Ripley is staring at Jude Law bang his girlfriend in the boat. He's like, Tommy, how's the peeping?
I will look into at least 3 of these movies after this is over for sure.
Excellent movie, Talented Mr. Ripley. I'd watch that any day of the week.
American
It's pretty good.
Gigolo.
It's very dark. American Gigolo versus The Talented Mr. Ripley. This is round 1.
I'm going to say American Gigolo. I bet the audience score is higher for Ripley, but I don't remember it being like a blowout critical success. So I'm going to go with, which is really where the RT score comes from. So I'm going to say, Gigolo did better.
You're going American Gigolo. Okay. American Gigolo, 69%.
Nice.
Ironically. The Talented Mr. Ripley, 84%.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Yes.
I'm eating dick on this game. I did not think that's how this was going to go.
That was round 1. Don't worry, Rob. You got 2 more.
I did better on Mikey's.
Right. You were talking so much trash on Mikey.
But if you had put all mine in the category of a single sport, maybe I'd be doing better.
Right. Well, remember the theme is characters who are stylish.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. I think that might help you in
All
these
right.
next two. Okay, here we go. Next movie description. A rich, shallow, and socially successful girl is at the top of her Beverly Hills high school pecking scale. She coaxes two teachers
Clueless.
into from 1995. The movie is Clueless. Rob, you're on the board.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I knew you would get the hang of this. Next movie. In the 23rd century, a New York City cabbie finds the fate of the world in his hands.
The Fifth Element.
From 1997, the movie is The Fifth Element. Rob, 2 in a row. Stylish.
Now you're in my ballpark.
Okay. All right. Now we found the speed. So now put on your thinking cap. Think like a critic. Clueless versus The Fifth Element.
Clueless.
Clueless is your pick. Clueless is 81%.
Yeah.
The Fifth Element, 71%. Nailed that one, Rob.
There we go.
3
This
for
is how
3
I thought I might do.
on round 2 there. Yeah. Okay. Just took you a second to get the feel, get the speed, get the pace of the game. So
Just like,
We got one
once
last
I was
round.
socially aware as a person.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I like how you said, what movie was it? Like, that movie probably happened before I was born. It was 1999.
Yeah, right. Was it? No, I said early 90s on that one. That was
that's
my
right.
guess.
Yeah, you said
I said
early
most
90s.
of the ones just because you said Wall Street and American Gigolo.
Yeah.
Those were before I was born. I was 88.
This game does skew 90s, so that was smart of you to think that way. All right, here we go. Last round.
Let's go for 6.
A husband and wife have 3 children, and then they separate. All 3 children are extraordinary, all geniuses. Blaming the father, virtually all memory of the brilliance of the children is erased by decades of betrayal, failure, and disaster. The family is reunited unexpectedly one sudden winter.
Whoa. 3
Remember,
kids,
the theme
2
is
parents,
highly stylish.
3 kids,
3
parents
children,
separate. The kids
all
are
geniuses.
brilliant. Geniuses. It's definitely not baby geniuses.
It's definitely not Ed. I don't know if you remember the movie Ed. Definitely not that.
Oh yeah, it's like they fall. Is that no? That's Ed TV.
That was Matt LeBlanc has a pet monkey.
No,
Right?
I don't know that movie.
that might help you in this game.
I can name
actually.
the other Matt LeBlanc movie.
How many movies was Matt LeBlanc in? It
Only
can't
ones
be...
I can think of other than that are Lost in Space and Charlie's Angels.
Oh shoot! I forgot about Lost in Space and Charlie's Angels. I was like, was he even
Lost in
any
Space
movies?
is not bad.
Huh?
As a slept-on movie. Let's see. Okay, 3 kids that are geniuses. Parents get divorced and they're reunited in the winter. What the fuck is that? I don't
Stylish.
know. Yeah, I can't. I got nothing on that.
The movie is from 2001, The Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh yeah, you hit one of my weak spots.
Well, I'm the same way. This was for a young Pat Ramirez. This was highly skippable. I was like, what the hell is this bullshit?
I started watching that movie. I remember I rented it at one point when I was in my early 20s. I rented that movie. I started it because I have a friend who still to this day is a huge fan of what's the guy who makes all those movies?
Wes Anderson, I think,
Wes
is
Anderson
the director of this.
Is a diehard Wes Anderson film, and he was like, "You got to watch that. You got to watch Rushmore. You got to watch all these." And I tried to watch Royal Tenenbaums because of cast. I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Oh my god, I don't turn off a lot of movies. I didn't finish.
Yeah,
it. I
it's
was like, I
a
don't
tough
get
watch.
this.
I'm with you. I'm the same way about Life Aquatic. I was like, I've
Never watched
I'm
it.
I'm gonna watch Armageddon for the 13th time.
The only one I ever watched end to end, and I actually did enjoy it, and maybe it was because I was on a pretty serious edible, was the Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Ooh,
That's a good
interesting
movie.
combination there.
Yeah. I went with some people in college and saw it in the theater, and I was like on a pot cookie, and I had a great time. Maybe that's what I need to do to watch the rest of Wes Anderson's canon.
Yeah, maybe. He was hot for so long where there
Yeah.
was Wes Anderson cred where everybody would bawl their eyes out over him. And you'd be like, does this movie suck?
Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't get it. I'm with you. Didn't get it.
Usually that way with David O. Russell too. I just don't.
Heavy period in directors, the 90s. We had Tarantino, Kevin Smith, David O. Russell, Wes Anderson, Paul Thomas Anderson, where
Right.
just like everybody was just like, gotta go see it. And then sometimes it wouldn't be as good and you wouldn't want to say.
Kevin Smith and Tarantino, I don't miss a fucking movie they've
Right.
made.
There's
Die
movies
Hard.
that I don't like of those directors, but like I still got to see them. Like I still
Yeah.
got to see what it's all about, and then I can make my judgment.
I gotta buy Clerks 3 on Amazon or whatever and watch it. I'm gonna watch it.
All right, last movie.
Yeah.
A group of thieves assemble to pull off the perfect diamond heist. It turns into a bloody ambush when one of the men turns out to be a police informer. The group begins to question each other's guilt. Tensions heighten and threaten to explode before the police step in.
I feel like you helped me out too much. I almost
Ooh.
said Heat, but it's definitely Reservoir Dogs.
From 1992, the movie is Reservoir Dogs. You got it. Oh, yeah, Heat would be. I mean, they don't try and
It's
steal
not diamonds. It's a bank.
Right. And there's no police informer in Heat. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just Val Kilmer losing his mind.
Val Kilmer goes to the basketball court when he's leaving. It's like,
Right.
you guys know where I can get some bread?
I
then,
love Reservoir Dogs so much.
Yeah.
A friend of mine and I, we never got it up on its feet, but we adapted that into a stage play. It would make a great stage play.
That would.
Is it all pretty much? You just put it all in the fucking thing, and then you have a downstage area that shows you the back flash scenes. Anyway, go ahead.
That would work. Yeah. Reservoir Dogs.
Royal Tenenbaums or Reservoir Dogs critically.
Tough. Yeah. Very tough.
That is tough because I feel like neither one were like widely loved.
Okay. Think
I'm
like
gonna
a
have
critic.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go Reservoir Dogs because I feel like it had to have had some pretty decent critical success or Pulp Fiction wouldn't have happened.
Right. Okay. All right. I see your mindset.
That's gonna be my guess.
Okay. So you're going to go Reservoir
I have 4
Dogs?
points, right? Shooting
You
for
have-
5.
You have 4 currently. Yes.
Got
You
it.
have 4 currently. I almost want to give you an extra one for bringing up Heat because I love Heat. The point by association. I
And
like
I got the
when,
Wall Street. I got both of those.
That's right. You got the practice ones as well. You started out hot. Yeah, I do. I want to give you an extra one for Heat. If you only quote 7 to 9 Heat lines, I'll definitely give you an extra point. I like when the girl at the bar sidles up to hit on Robert De Niro and she's like, "What are you reading?" And he's like, "Book about metals." Like, what kind of response is this? Who would ever talk like this?
She's got a nice fat ass.
That's right. You work for us now. That is it. Like, why do you speak like this, Al Pacino? And never stop
I don't know.
speaking. That's right. What's the guy's name? Ted or who's the girl that his wife is sleeping with? Frank or something. It's like,
Yeah,
Frank
it's like a
cannot watch
single
my
syllable.
TV. Rips the TV out of the wall.
Great movie. It was on 2 tapes. You had
Yes, it was.
to have,
It was
you had to have
2
2
VHSs.
tapes of the VHSs. Yeah.
Yep. Yes, it was. Oh, I love Heat. I'm going to watch it right now too.
So yeah, I'm gonna go with Reservoir Dogs over Tenenbaums.
The Royal Tenenbaums is 81%.
Oh fuck them.
Reservoir Dogs is 89%. You got it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Putting us at the strong 5.
I'll take 5 out of 9, man.
That's right. Pretty good. Tough round too. So I would not feel bad about that at all.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I would do a whole podcast with you. That's just that game. That's a great game.
Yeah. I've made like 20 something of them for each individual person. So I got a lot of movie knowledge stuck in my head. I'm waiting for the right one where I can give someone Necessary Roughness, Breaking Away, and The Edge. Those are my Pat Ramirez deep cuts that I think only me and 13 other people saw.
I love The Edge, dude.
Oh, me too. I love The Edge.
I'm gonna kill the fucking bear.
We're going to kill the motherfucker.
Yeah, so good, dude. My dad watched that movie so many times, and it took me like the 5th time he watched it to be like, all right. And then I watched it. I was like, okay, I see why you watched this so many fucking times. It's really good.
It's essentially Anthony Hopkins doing Hamlet in the woods.
Yes.
What it is.
Why wouldn't you immediately? Have you ever done like a live version of this game?
No, I haven't. The closest I ever did is me and my brother were in the same room and we did a breakdown of the movie Selena, and my parents sat on the couch and watched us.
That's pretty good.
Watch us talk about it. Yeah.
Dude, you should do a version of this as a stage show where you invite audience members on stage to win shit and play the Rotten Tomatoes game.
That's a great idea. Movie number 1, Heat.
Yeah, exactly.
That is right. Okay, motherfucker. And that will be me doing lame Al Pacino lines from Heat for entire 90 minutes. You may have
Everybody
created a monster,
wins.
Rob. Everybody wins. Well, Rob Morris, his show on YouTube is We're New. What is it? We're New?
We are new.
We Are New on YouTube. You can find him on there. I've watched a couple episodes of it, Rob. It's completely enjoyable.
Thanks, man.
So excellent. Rotten Tomatoes movie game, his journey, comedy, works in TV. Rob, thanks for talking to me.
Dude, this was so much fun. Thanks for having me, Pat. I really appreciate it.
Okay, that is it. That is the show. That is running it back for this week. I want to thank Rob Morris for coming on the show, playing the Rotten Tomatoes head-to-head game, and doing a deep dive into his life, his career path, his thoughts, everything in between. What a talk. Did we go deep? That's how these interviews go. You learn something about a person. At least I do. How did you do on the Rotten Tomatoes game? Because that was not easy. Hey, don't forget, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to Running It Back, give my channel a subscribe. The Sunday Night Talk is currently running. It's in season. You have access to that, not to mention my stand-up comedy clips are there as well. Speaking of stand-up comedy, you can see me doing live stand-up comedy at the Hollywood Improv, performing in the Lab November 21st. Give me a shout if you're coming. It's going to be a great show. Honestly, how did you do on that game? It was tough. If you didn't get a perfect score, don't feel bad. I want to thank Rob Morris for joining me on the show. Go check him out on Instagram. He is at Rob Morris Yo. He is the host of his very own YouTube show called We Are New. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will see you next time.